Nines tried to think about how she could discreetly move around the library without attracting attention. The library was supposed to open soon, but radio had said something about declaring a national emergency. That was a good enough reason for Nines to keep the place closed. She snuck around to where she could peek out the front of the library and realized she had flipped the sign to the "sorry we're closed" position. She snuck back to where no theoretical people would have line of sight of her. She didn't want to attract attention, so people would demand the library open. It was essentially a public library, so it was supposed to be open except in emergency. Hopefully nobody would arrive and try to bother her. She snuck into the bathroom, locked the door, and was delighted the water was still running. No reoccurring hot water, of course, but at least water. This was due to the entire system in the library running on gravity instead of electricity, a smart energy-saving technique. There were enough toiletries and hygiene products stored at the library to last her a long time. Nines also had several changes of clothes stored at the library in case she wanted to change without having to go back to the apartment. She wasn't overly athletic, but liked to jog on occasion. There was also more formal wear for if the library was hosting an event, and several changes of shoes. There seemed to be a tiny bit of hot water left in the system, so Nines took her last shower, as she called it. That's when she would take a shower right after the power went out, since she never knew when it would come back on. Usually the power was only ever out for a few hours, but it was good practice regardless. The shower was quick but refreshing. She could think a little bit better. Thankfully, she was done right when the last of the hot water turned cold. She put on her athletic clothes after she towel dried and was set to go. They were the kind of casual, sporty clothes that breathed and were self-cleaning. Due to having a light silver lining. Not widely considered work appropriate, but could go weeks if you had to and never felt icky. Then she brushed her shoulder-length auburn hair and quickly tucked it behind her and her head in a tight bun. Nines quickly unlocked and opened the bathroom door. The warm air rushed out and the cold air came in. She was immediately chilled, the cold air finding moisture and gripping it before her clothing had time to adapt. She carefully peered out and didn't see anyone through her narrow field of view and slowly walked back to her little library command center. She remembered from reading that fast motions attracted attention. Unfortunately, Nines had never really forced herself to remain in cold weather where her body would get used to burning hotter. It was something she told herself that she would have to get used to, but not this second. She found an insulated shell jacket that her library was given as a prize they'd won for being such a successful library. It was smartly branded with the library. Nines was very proud of it. The jacket was very baggy but felt great to wear and complemented the comfort of her athletic clothing well. The jacket had tons of pockets, and so Nines put her keys and flashlights in it, and then Nines had a really good thought. She dug through her get-home bag, through her spare clothes, and extra first aid kit, and pulled out her shoulder holster. She never had a reason to wear it before, but kept it in her bag in case she ever needed it. Nines took her jacket off and waggled the holster around a bit before she figured out which arm went where. She remembered seeing some of the guys at the indoor range wearing them and got it figured out without twisting herself up too much. It fit her a little loose, and so she tightened it up with the buckles. The holster system became snug everywhere it was supposed to, and she realized she didn't even feel it anymore. She took her full-size 9mm out of her bag, verified the round indicator showed there was a round in the chamber, then holstered her sidearm. The external hammer was down, so it would take double action to fire. This made the sidearm much safer to carry. The holster was designed for a sidearm with a light attachment, and so the sidearm fit really well. With the sidearm holstered under her left arm, it concealed perfectly. Nines took the spare mags from her bag and put them in a center pocket in her jacket where she would normally reach for her mags to do tactical reloads at the range. Where to put my pocket pistol? It normally sat inside her waistband in a comfortable little special-made sleeve with a clip to attach to her belt. She took the holster out of the pile of her prior set of clothes. Her pocket pistol still attached, so she took the subcompact firearm and took it out of its sleeve. The chamber indicator showed it was loaded, and she set it on the table and pointed it in a safe direction. The holster had an adjustable tension device that Nines was able to remove. It kept her pistol in place and made it to where the trigger couldn't get bumped. She looked at it and decided to leave the clip on, but switched the sides on the clip. Nines reholstered her sidearm and put it in a vertical internal pocket. Her main pistol would be accessible with an unzipped jacket by her right hand, and her backup would be accessible by her left hand in a natural motion. Nine's jacket was heavy duty and handled the weight of her mags and subcompact really well. Her backup had extra magazines for her subcompact also, but she didn't want to confuse herself with multiple mag types in her jacket. The main flashlight went in another pocket where it wouldn't confuse her. She zipped the jacket back up and started to warm up a bit, her sidearms warming up with her and helping to hold on to the body heat. Nines turned on the NOAA radio quietly, and it was advertising everyone to stay indoors, advising, and more about the civil unrest. She decided it was time to do what she always did, get more books. Nines wanted to use her cameras as a last resort, plus she wanted to save the batteries for other uses, potentially. She probably wouldn't take in survivors unless she knew them, but Nines admitted to herself that she'd never given it much thought. It was a public library, so she was probably supposed to take people in. Then she realized to herself it would only be in coordination with the security force that was FEMA mandated. These books were too valuable after all. Her library was no gymnasium. This was a place for learning. Nines popped her head out and listened. There was only wind and rain to hear. She rounded a corner to where she would have line of sight of the front door. Nobody was there and she didn't hear anything. Schools were closed, she remembered from the announcements, but nobody seemed to be trying to make it to the library. Nines doubled back the other direction to where she knew the books were that she was imagining. There were books about civil unrest if she could find the section quickly and quietly. It was hard for her to move slow, wanting to get back to her safe room as fast as possible. The building had shatterproof windows and incredibly solid doors, but nothing people couldn't get through if determined. Nines knew her best defense for her and the library was to remain unseen. Nines cautiously made her way to the correct book section, walking slow and pausing to listen. After a few minutes, she got to the area in the corner of the library. She grabbed a book about the 1960s, 1992 LA riots, the 1999 WTO riots, and finally one of the 2014 Ferguson riots. She remembered she had some magazines outlining the 2017 G20 riots and the November 2016 riots through the February 2017 riots. There was also one about Occupy Wall Street. Nines grabbed those as well, along with a magazine about the rise of multiple extreme domestic terrorists trying to overthrow the government. Nines was about to call it good when she noticed one that outlined a bunch of Black Fridays and sports victories and defeat riots. The magazine on the front noted that it would be impossible to tell the difference. Nines shook her head in disgust but nodded in grim affirmation as she scooped up the literature. These included some of the more extreme riots of late, which made Nines feel like she was getting a well-rounded view. These would be tough reads, but it would give her the most well-rounded information she needed, whether a police state was coming or martial law or complete and total anarchy. Nines got about halfway back to her hidden study and heard a car pull up. Nines recalled from a story she read that motion was more easily detected side to side and moving fast. Whoever they were, they would see her definitely if she tried to dart fast. She scooted slowly. They could get to the front door in time to see her if she scooted slowly. She did the only thing that made sense and froze, the books and magazines in her arms instantly reminding her of their weight. Nines stood up straight and pulled the stack of literature to her stomach, trying to keep the weight close. She didn't hear any voices, but heard someone walk up to the front door. Nines imagined them peering inside, but unable to see her from this angle. If they walked around the building, they would surely see her if they could figure out what they were looking at. Nines was dreading the possibility of what-ifs, including what if the door started to shake. Had she locked it properly? She was sure she had. She heard a steel door open and many large thumps land inside the building. Someone was dropping off books. The person outside mumbled to themselves for a moment, got in the car, and drove off. Nines waited a minute to make sure they weren't circling the building and then scooted into her nook, arms strained from the weight. She reminded herself that she needed to start doing some push-ups to get stronger. To be clear, Nines reminded herself that she wasn't afraid of other people. She was afraid of what she might have to do to defend herself. Nines caught the last half of the NOAA transmission. It would repeat again soon. Something about how emergency services were experiencing extended delays and only to call under extreme emergencies. Nines wrote down some notes to grab some books on some ocean-based natural disasters next and included the words Katrina, Andrew, Frida, and Inauguration Day. That seemed appropriate since she would need to learn what happened after a big ocean and windstorm like the one they were currently having.